The night was unnaturally still. No army surrounded the city. No invading king stood at its gates. The markets had gone quiet. The laughter had faded, and beneath the darkness, most people believed tomorrow would arrive exactly as every other day had. Then the sky erupted. Flames, unlike anything remembered in ancient memory, descended from above. Buildings collapsed in moments. Towers disappeared behind choking smoke. The ground itself seemed to revolt against those who stood upon it. By sunrise, two prosperous cities had become a scar upon the earth. For thousands of years, one question has refused to disappear. What really happened to Sodom and Gomorrah? Their names have become synonymous with divine judgment, yet behind the familiar story lies a world far more complex than legend alone. Archaeology, ancient texts, and centuries of debate have transformed these cities into one of history's greatest mysteries. Whether viewed through faith, history, or science, their destruction continues to challenge the way we think about justice, civilization, and the fragile line between prosperity and collapse. Long before they became symbols, they were simply cities. The fertile plain surrounding the lower Jordan Valley was unlike the rugged hills that bordered it. Rivers and springs nourished fields that produced abundant harvests. Trade routes connected merchants from distant kingdoms. Travelers described the region as remarkably rich, a place where agriculture flourished and wealth accumulated with astonishing speed. Among these thriving settlements stood Sodom and Gomorrah. Their exact locations remain debated, but ancient tradition consistently places them near the southeastern shores of what is now the Dead Sea. It was a landscape where prosperity seemed almost guaranteed. Crops grew easily, livestock multiplied, and commerce attracted strangers from across the region. Into this prosperous world arrived Abraham. According to Genesis, his growing flocks had become too numerous to share the same grazing lands with his nephew Lot. Rather than allow conflict between their households, Abraham offered Lot the first choice of territory. Looking across the valley, Lot saw what appeared to be paradise. The land was green, fertile, and full of opportunity. It was a decision that would shape history. Lot settled near Sodom, believing he had secured the better future for his family. At first, there was little reason to suspect otherwise. The city offered wealth, protection behind its walls, and access to flourishing trade. Yet beneath its prosperity, another reputation had already begun to spread. The biblical account describes the people of Sodom as profoundly wicked, though it offers surprisingly little detail at first. Later passages throughout Scripture expand that picture, portraying a society marked not only by sexual immorality, but also by arrogance, violence, injustice, and a complete disregard for the vulnerable. Centuries later, the prophet Ezekiel would describe their sins in unexpected terms: pride, excess, prosperous ease, and a refusal to help the poor and needy. Their downfall, according to that tradition, was not born from one act alone, but from an entire culture that had abandoned compassion. As Sodom prospered, something essential had begun to decay. Then came a visitor unlike any other. Genesis describes the Lord revealing to Abraham that an outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah had become so great that judgment was imminent. What followed is one of the most remarkable conversations in the Hebrew Bible. Abraham did not celebrate. Instead, he pleaded, "Would the cities be spared for 50 righteous people? What about 45, 40, 30, 20, even 10? Again and again, the number fell. Again and again, mercy remained possible. The exchange reveals a God willing to spare entire cities if even a small remnant of righteousness could be found within them. But no such remnant appeared. Two heavenly messengers entered Sodom at evening. Lot met them near the city gate, the place where legal matters and civic affairs were often conducted. Against their initial reluctance, he insisted they stay in his home rather than spend the night in the public square. His urgency soon became clear. Before night had fully settled, men from throughout the city surrounded Lot's house. The biblical narrative portrays a terrifying scene of collective violence directed toward the strangers. Hospitality, one of the ancient world's highest moral obligations, had collapsed into open brutality. The account is disturbing, and its details have been debated for centuries. Yet its central point remains unmistakable. The city had become a place where violence and corruption were no longer exceptions. They had become ordinary. The messengers intervened. The attackers were struck with blindness, unable to find the doorway despite standing only steps away. Then came the warning. Gather your family. Leave immediately. Do not look back. The destruction was no longer a possibility. It had become inevitable. At dawn, Lot hesitated. The hesitation is one of the story's most human moments. Leaving meant abandoning homes, possessions, memories, and every certainty his family had ever known. Yet the messengers urged them forward, taking them by the hand and leading them outside the city before sunrise. As they fled toward the hills, the horizon behind them began to change. Genesis describes sulfur and fire raining from heaven upon Sodom and Gomorrah. The cities, the surrounding plain, and the vegetation were consumed. The fertile valley that had once resembled paradise became a landscape associated forever with devastation. Then, in only a single sentence, another tragedy unfolded. Lot's wife looked back. The text gives no explanation for why she turned. Perhaps it was grief, perhaps disbelief, perhaps the unbearable instinct to see what was being lost. She became a pillar of salt. Whether understood literally, symbolically, or somewhere between, her fate has echoed through history as a warning about the cost of clinging to a world already passing away. When Abraham looked toward the valley later that morning, he saw only dense smoke rising from the land, like the smoke of a furnace. It is one of the Bible's most haunting images. For centuries, many assumed the story belonged entirely to theology. Then, archaeology entered the conversation. The region surrounding the Dead Sea presents extraordinary geological conditions. It sits along one of the world's most active fault systems. Earthquakes have shaped the landscape for millennia. Beneath the surface lie deposits of asphalt, natural gas, sulfur, and highly flammable materials capable of producing catastrophic fires under the right conditions. Some researchers have suggested that a powerful earthquake could have ignited these underground deposits, creating an inferno remembered for generations. Others have proposed an even more dramatic possibility. Excavations at the ancient site of Tal el-Hammam uncovered evidence of an immense high-temperature destruction event dating to the Middle Bronze Age. Some scientists argue that the damage resembles the effects of a cosmic airburst, similar to the Tunguska event that flattened millions of trees over Siberia in 1908. According to this hypothesis, an exploding meteor in the atmosphere could have unleashed temperatures so extreme that mud brick structures vaporized, pottery surfaces melted into glass, and human remains were violently fragmented. The explosion may also have scattered salt from the Dead Sea across nearby farmland, rendering it infertile for generations. The theory remains controversial. Not all archaeologists agree that Tal el-Hammam was Sodom. Others dispute the interpretation of the evidence or favor more conventional geological explanations. The debate continues. What remains beyond dispute is that the ancient world remembered an extraordinary catastrophe somewhere within this region. Whether that memory preserved a supernatural judgment, an extraordinary natural disaster, or both working together lies beyond the reach of archaeology alone. Yet perhaps the enduring power of Sodom and Gomorrah has never depended solely on identifying ruins beneath the sand. It endures because every civilization eventually confronts the same uncomfortable questions. Can prosperity survive without justice? Can wealth replace compassion? Can a society become so convinced of its own security that it fails to recognize the warning signs gathering on the horizon? The cities vanished long ago, but the questions remained. Today, travelers standing along the silent shores of the Dead Sea see an unforgiving landscape of salt, rock, and barren earth. Somewhere beneath that terrain may rest the memories of communities that once believed they were untouchable. History remembers countless cities for what they built. The world remembers Sodom and Gomorrah for what they ignored. And perhaps that is why, thousands of years after the fire faded and the smoke disappeared into the sky, their story still burns.